All right, good morning and welcome to Live from Size Lounge. My name is Matt Van Winkle with the ISU Alumni Association. Thank you for tuning into our conversation today. We are really excited to bring you these alumni interviews here on Facebook Live. If you've missed any of our previous conversations, you can find those under the video tab on our Facebook page. We are able to bring you these each week thanks to the more than 43,000 members of the Alumni Association. If you're interested in supporting the association and receiving all the benefits and services of being a member, please visit isualum.org to learn more. Our guest today is Ruki Neuhold-Ravikumar, who serves as the Acting Undersecretary for Education at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. She is also the Director of Education at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in New York City. It was here at Iowa State University where Ruki studied graphic design and received a Master of Fine Arts in 2003. Most recently, she has been leading a Smithsonian-wide team that's been responding to the distant learning needs of teachers, students, and families during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hi, Ruki.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. We want to jump right in, and I know you have a very busy schedule as you have been probably adjusting to everything that's been going on with the pandemic and working in education. So maybe let's just jump into talking about how you kind of ended up at Iowa State. I know you grew up in India, is that correct?
I did. I grew up in India, and I have an undergraduate degree in history of fine art and drawing and painting. I dabbled in a lot of different creative careers in India. But while working in an advertising agency, I got introduced to graphic design and really fell in love with it and felt like I needed to learn more. At that point, there was really only one design school in India. And as you can imagine, thousands of people applied to get into that one school. And I also, wanted to challenge myself a little bit more, see more of the world, and in some ways defy maybe the traditional path that I could see in front of me in India. And so with that, I chose to apply for graduate schools abroad, and Iowa State was among them.
Very cool. I'm guessing, growing up in India, there's so much beautiful architecture and art. Was that kind of an inspiration for you to getting into art and art history?
Well, I have parents who are both creative. My dad's a naval architect and mom is an artist. So I grew up in a household exposed to arts and creative thinking and really looking at the world in very interesting ways. But you're right. I mean, India is a gorgeous country, and you're surrounded by history, beautiful architecture, a lot of color. So it's easy to be inspired.
Great. So you work at the Smithsonian. Talk about the work that you do and your role there and kind of how you found that job. It's such an interesting job and a unique place to be.
So I've actually been a part of the Smithsonian for almost 4 years now. I started as the Director of Education for Cooper Hewitt, which is the Smithsonian Design Museum in New York. And since November of 2019, I have accepted the Acting Undersecretary role for Education. And it's part of a new organizational structure to support our new secretary's really bold vision for the Smithsonian, to put education at the core of the Smithsonian's purpose. I really have an amazing job. My playground and my workplace are the same thing. But in my role, I get to shape the educational voice of the institution, design our national strategy for outreach. I help keep the 300 plus educators connected to each other and the mission of the institution. I get to lead a lot of our pan-institutional educational initiatives, like the one you just talked about with our distance learning efforts. And of course, I get to serve as the voice of the educator at the decision-making table.
Very cool. Talk about the challenges that you've been kind of presented with this COVID-19 pandemic and how you've been able to really work with parents and educators and students to kind of bridge the gap in these muddy waters that we've been dealing with.
These are definitely interesting times, aren't they? I think
Right.
if you had a plan for what you were going to be doing in July a few months ago, that has completely changed. Everyone is talking about what their new normal might be, and that's definitely the case for the Smithsonian as well. As you can imagine, with the Smithsonian, with our numerous museums and research centers, we really did a wonderful job, I think, of coming together and putting the user and the learner first when we started to shape what our distance learning efforts would be. If an institution like the Smithsonian put everything that we have online, it would be the most overwhelming experience for anybody. And so it just served as well to ask people what they needed, and to deliver that to them. And that's really how that distance learning initiative got started. We heard from teachers who were overwhelmed, who were needing a lot of support with teaching in new ways, with connecting to their students from afar. We had parents who were turning dining room tables into home offices in schools and didn't really feel equipped to be teaching full time. And then, of course, as time passed, we found that people got past the binge watching habits and really wanted to do something more productive with their time. Sure. And what better place to learn with than the Smithsonian?
Well, just think about the age that we live in now with technology and how you guys have probably been able to digitize a lot of the historical artifacts and everything that you guys house at the Smithsonian to be able to make that available to students now. People 20, 30 years ago even wouldn't have had that access unless they went to the Smithsonian, which isn't possible right now. So talk about how valuable that is to be able to have those resources available to students.
I think so. And I think, the Smithsonian had a few key initiatives that it launched early on with the Open Access Initiative, where you can really easily access all of the digitized resources. And then we have our Learning Lab platform, which really serves as a sandbox for teachers to think through how the Smithsonian's digitized resources might help them in their classrooms, virtual or otherwise. And I think some of those key initiatives really helped us with our distance learning efforts. The Smithsonian, I know a lot of people think about museums only when they travel, but it's really at the cutting edge of science and research. We have a lot of researchers and research centers working on future-focused topics. So the Smithsonian can really serve anybody throughout the arc of their careers, whether you're a kid or a parent, and that's what makes my job so exciting.
Sure. Let's talk about your time here that you spent at Iowa State. Talk about your experience here, getting your Master's in Fine Arts in Graphic Design.
I have very fond memories of Iowa State. I have to admit that the first few months were a bit of a rude shock. When you go from Chennai, India, where it's always hot, to Ames, Iowa, I think nothing prepares you for the temperature shift. Yeah. Also, just in terms of number of people around you, I remember thinking, maybe more people will come, but that was it. That was the total number of people there. But it was such a rewarding experience. I think for the first time, I really got to shut out some of the noise of expectations that people have set for you, and for me to think about, what did I want to do? What did I want for myself? And I would say the faculty there, a special mention to Lisa Fontaine, really gave me the space to hear myself think, to figure out what my voice was, and to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. And I think that was just so critical. And I have some fond memories of that. I had a lot of the same maybe graduate experiences that a lot of other international students do, where you're trying to adjust to a new environment, figure things out, adjust your language, learn to eat new things. So a lot of those come to mind as well, but it really teaches you how to be a resilient and adaptable human being. And I had a terrific experience. I've used it to date.
Very cool. Well, I'm guessing the person who is in the position that you have today would really love to learning about new things. What kind of topics interest you the most? What do you spend the most time taking in?
I think I'm really interested in how people learn. And as an educator, I think when you meet people and you start to figure out why they learn things a certain way or how they learn it, it really makes you a better educator when you start to figure some of that out. So I'm one of those people who takes classes for fun. I know people tease me about it, but it's something I've always done. I like learning about new things. And I think that the more I learn new things, I will make maybe interesting connections that people haven't made before. So I try not to read about the exact same things because I feel like a good breadth of topics sometimes helps me make interesting connections.
Do you have a favorite exhibit or museum of the Smithsonian?
That's a hard question at the Smithsonian. Ever since I've been in DC, I know that I've been pre-COVID, I was taking a lot of time to tour all of the museums. And I think even if I spent 10 years walking to each museum, I wouldn't see it all. There's something in every place that you can connect to that's absolutely fascinating. But if you're not able to go in person, there's still a ton of virtual tours that you can enjoy. And of course, there's so much that's open and accessible online. But it's really, it's a hard one to pick a favorite. I think that changes by the day.
This video I'm playing was off your YouTube channel about your open access. Talk a little bit about that. It was I was kind of digging through it a little bit. It looked really interesting.
Well, we've really seen that the Smithsonian is for the people. And so for people to be able to access the rich amount of information. And so the Open Access Initiative was really making our digitized objects and collections available and easy for people to use in their day-to-day lives and in the work that they do.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably been a bit of a challenge too, because people haven't been able to go to the museums. You guys are closed, I'm assuming, right now, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing you've heard from a lot of people that are wishing they've been open and that people can get in them because people are looking for things to do in the summer. But this would probably be one of your busier times of the year, I would imagine, with students out of school. But having those archives available online and those 3D tours must be really nice for families to kind of dig through.
We've had an incredibly high traffic to all of our websites and all of our distance learning resources. We are definitely thinking about what reopening the Smithsonian would be, and we're in that mindset of from being safe at home to stay at home to safe at work. What does that transition look like, even for our Smithsonian staff? But of course, I'm definitely at this point reminiscing and eager to get back and be in my playground. So I'm hopeful that there's an end to this outbreak.
Sure. Maybe what's the most surprising thing that you've learned, maybe historically or just about your role, and your job with the Smithsonian? What's maybe the most interesting thing that you've learned throughout your time there?
I think for me, what's been interesting is how little people really use a resource like a museum or the Smithsonian. And we tend to think about it only when we're traveling or we're tourists, but it's really, you could use it as a student, as a teacher, as really anybody who wants to learn something. And I found that it's an underutilized resource. So that has been surprising. I have to admit, I had the same reaction when I started working at the Cooper Hewitt, being someone who was a design professor for 14 years. There were resources that I had not used, and I thought I would be such a different teacher today, just knowing how to use some of those museum resources. So I hope more people will dig in and look at it as a place to learn beyond the time they're tourists in DC.
Perfect. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, do you have any kind of final thoughts or any kind of words of advice for people, maybe students that are watching this, future students that are coming to Iowa State about education or getting their master's degree or anything? Because as you work for the Smithsonian, you're kind of encompassed in that throughout your daily life. So maybe any final words?
I would say investing in your higher education is absolutely worth it. It did wonders for me. And I would say Iowa State really gave me a relevant educational experience. It's been a while since I've been in school, but it feels like yesterday because I'm still able to use so much of what I learned. And it's a place that was critical to help me shape who I am today. So I have the best to say about my experience, and I hope more people will consider higher education and higher education at Iowa State.
Great. Well, Ruki, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that the Smithsonian and all of your museums are able to open up to the public again sometime soon. And the best to you and health and moving forward.
Thanks, Matt. This was such
All
a
right.
pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.